2:03, so we can get started right on time as intended. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you, Dylan. I'm super excited to talk to you here today. So excited to welcome Dylan Meyer, the Associate Director of Sustainability at Braze. We're going to talk a lot about the work that you do, about what it's like to build up the sustainability program from very early on at a software company, at what we'll call a mid-sized software company. Where I want to start is actually your work at Verizon. And where I want to start within that is you're at Verizon for a little over 3 years and you joined Braze almost 2 years ago. Can you walk through how it's different to do this work at we'll call it an infrastructure, a telco company like Verizon with giant physical assets, large resources, huge physical world challenges versus what it's like to do this at a place like Braze, I don't know, six, seven, $800 million revenue SaaS company? What are the big differences between those two jobs?
Yeah, thanks, Adriel, and thanks everyone for joining today. It's great to see everyone. Happy to talk about my sustainability journey and just the sustainability field at large. I think to answer your question, I'm going to answer it in the first part with the complete opposite way you asked it. Is the similarities, which I think are really important here, is that Verizon is a company that has over 100,000 employees, is based in over 60 countries around the world. My current organization, Braze, has a little under 3,000. We operate in 16 countries globally. We're both publicly traded, but I think I just want to answer this question first and foremost, just saying what's similar because everything starts and ends with our science-based targets for both organizations. So we both kind of have the same guiding light that we're following, but how we make decisions to achieve those targets, to achieve those public, external, and internal goals are very different. So I would say the biggest difference is governance. At an organization like Verizon, there is a significant amount of checks and balances. There's a lot more departments and kind of barriers to break through in order to reach an agreement. That's not a negative thing. It's just in terms of the size and scope of the company and how many touch points each decision impacts on. And the nice thing about Braze, and one thing that I've loved working at my current organization, is how nimble we are. In that, yes, it still takes a lot of time and internal stakeholder buy-in to get approval for targets and certain initiatives, but I have the capability and the opportunity at Braze to really run with things and to get them seen at a senior level much more quicker than I was at a larger organization like Verizon. So I would say just in terms of the speed of which I can go at projects, all related to our emission reduction initiatives, that's the biggest difference I see in my day to day.
You maybe partially answered the next question already, but why at that moment in your career was it the right decision to go to a place like Braze? I mean, if you just take a place like Verizon, the platform you have, the impact you make, if you're able to decarbonize 1% at Verizon, that is probably 100x the impact of 1% decarbonization at a place like Braze. Same thing for
Correct.
resilience. If you're able to be 1% more resilient, you can do a lot more for many more lives and many more assets than can a place like Braze. However, there's also many advantages to a place like Braze. So walk through, there's a few people here just thinking about their own career and then we'll get to the actual work. But walk through why you took the opportunity and why it was interesting to you.
Yeah, I think that when you think about yourself in a sustainability, ESG, CSR, whatever acronym you want to use, career, everyone has a different journey. I've been working in the ESG/CSR field since 2013. I graduated college and I knew I wanted to do this work. I just didn't know how to do it. So I went from unpaid fellowships in Eastern Europe to like sustainability consulting in Colorado, to leading research, sustainability research at an academic think tank at Boston College, and then found my way to Verizon, which at the time and really still is was a dream job for me, where I was managing and helping support global sustainability strategy for a company that had an incredible impact. I mean, at the time when I was at Verizon, we had over 60,000 tier one suppliers. We were investing $1 billion a year into renewable energy projects through our green bond program, and we were really trying to radically alter our fleet to be as energy efficient as possible. Each one of these projects had more of an emissions reduction impact than any project I'll ever do at Braze, just in terms of scope. But then I was presented with the opportunity to lead a sustainability program from within at Braze. It's always been a career goal of mine to lead sustainability at a publicly traded company. And just kind of based on the work that I enjoyed and the teams that I like to work with the most, the mid-sized publicly traded tech company was really something that I loved and that I wanted to work with, especially because like working at Verizon, creating so many physical products, I wanted to pivot to the tech sector and kind of experience and explore what that was like. And I will note that I worked for 6 years prior to Verizon at the Boston College Center for Corporate Citizenship, where my job was every day working with our member companies on developing and enhancing their ESG strategies. Just a quick background on that. The Boston College Center for Corporate Citizenship is member founded. And so all the revenue that we generated at the time, or that they still do, is from members. And we had, when I left, over 500 corporate members. So from small scale companies like Patagonia and Lagunitas, all the way up to like Bank of America and Nike and Microsoft. So every day I really got to experience different companies of different sizes and different sectors tackling an assortment of different ESG issues. So I really got to see how a lot of different programs worked and operated. And so that really helped shape my perspective of first moving to Verizon and then going on to Braze.
Really quickly, by the way, folks, the chat is open and the Q&A is open, so feel free to chime in at any time, and we'll have a also separate Q&A section at the end. But chime in anytime. So you were at the college and you learned what Lagunitas did, and you learned what Microsoft did. You went to Verizon, you saw what Verizon did. You got to Braze, relatively new program, a lot of running room. I'm curious how you thought about what to do first. Did you come into the interview saying, "Hey, these are the three things. If you hire me, I'm doing these three things no matter what," or did you come in and saying, "I can do everything. First I need to explore what's most relevant." So like what was the process like to even determine what to do? And then what were those first three things you said you were going to do in your first year?
Yeah, and during the interview process, that was a big focus of mine. I wasn't trying to immediately pivot away from Verizon. I was trying to find the best opportunity for me at the time. So during the interview process, I really dug deep into like, hey, what is Braze trying to achieve? How ambitious are they trying to be with their climate targets and goals? Are they just trying to meet regulatory compliance? Are they trying to be leaders in the space? And luckily for me, the answer was that we're trying to be leaders in the space. And then just digging in a little bit deeper into like, hey, what does that mean? Like, and what are we missing? What are the gaps to get there? So, my first quarter at Braze, and I should say that my predecessor, who built the program from scratch, her name is Lillian Liu, Liu, who's absolutely brilliant. And is still based in New York, and we get to see her often, which is great. She built the Braze sustainability program from scratch. So she launched our first ESG report. She did our first 2 years of GHG emissions measurements. And now was the time for someone to come in and really build out the strategy. So the first thing that I focused on when I stepped into the door was first and foremost building out the governance structure. The ESG sustainability governance structure internally didn't really exist to that point. There were like random meetings with the board. There was some checkpoints with senior leadership, but it was more of like, hey, we need a yes or no on this at sporadic times throughout the year. So the first thing I did was I created a sustainability steering committee where I basically spent my first month at the company going on a listening tour, understanding what VPs and directors at different functions throughout the company were doing with their work and how they were previously involved in sustainability. I then selected the VPs and directors across the company who had the most material impact on our emission reduction targets. And we created a monthly sustainability steering committee meeting where we meet every month, provide updates, share the workout. Because my mission every day that I come into work is that sustainability should never be siloed. So I'm working every day to embed that into the organization and throughout every team, whether that's finance, procurement, sales, global real estate, etc.
I want to talk a lot about governance because I think it's very important. That path that you just described of we measured emissions, we did a bunch of stuff, and only later did we layer in governance as opposed to governance first and then work second is probably 99% of companies. So I want to get back to governance. But first, I'm curious. Every time I hear a version of like we had somebody who was passionate and really smart. And I know Lillian. That's how we got in touch for the first time 2 or so years ago. She is wonderful. But when somebody comes in on top of that with we're doing a bunch of stuff now, I got to bring strategy. There's some good that happens in that. Oh my gosh, we have momentum. We have all this program that's already been built out. But then there's also a bit of we'll call it a hangover of like things not quite done right or stuff kind of disorganized or some tensions that were created. And I know a few companies where they reference one guy who I think was, I mean, whatever, I won't name the company, but he was at two different companies in the mid 2010s and he did all this stuff and he committed them to science-based targets, committed them to net zero and said they're going to be carbon neutral forward. And it was like 2016. So I was like, sure, why not? We're committed to everything. And then he left, kind of like left the industry and they've got all these commitments that now people need to go and meet. And everyone's like, I can't believe we let that guy get away with it. Now, not saying Lillian did that by any means, but what was some of the momentum that you were handed when you first got to Braze? And what, if anything, were some of those hangover effects or just like things you really had to fix and improve really quickly?
Yeah, and I think I'll definitely focus on the momentum part of this because my predecessor was really fantastic. The momentum
And
wasn't
she's like
everything.
just for context on Lillian, she's like Swedish, speaks 9 languages, is a fashion designer,
Yeah, she's like a
uh,
leading sustainability fashion consultant right now.
like
She's
works for the
incredible.
UN, I think. Like she's just like one of those very rare people. Yeah.
My momentum when my first day in this position was that everything, the foundational pieces were all done right, right? I didn't have to go in and redo too much. Like we had the right approach with how we were measuring our emissions. And what was really nice is by the time I stepped in, Lillian had completed all of the background internal work for our near-term science-based targets. So she had gotten approval from our C-suite. She'd gotten approval from our board. And so when I stepped in, it was my turn to go in, work all the numbers, and then actually submit to the SBTI and then go through the pretty intensive validation process. So when I came in, it was like, okay, we're good to do this, but how? Because when you're a team of one at any company, when you lose that knowledge, it's really hard to replace. Because again, like as incredible as the previous person can be, and they can leave like the best, hey, this is where we left off documentation, like you're still starting back at square one. So just being able to come in and being like, okay, I understand where we are. Now let's actually get this across the finish line was really great momentum. And honestly, 2 years later, I'm still working off of that momentum because every program and initiative and call that I have today is based on achieving those targets that got started from my predecessor.
Yeah.
And then I would just say in terms of roadblocks, it's really just making sure that our internal stakeholders understand the why. It's critical for them to not just think, hey, we're doing this to save the planet, or we're doing this because it's green, or we're doing this because our CEO really cares about the environment, right? Like that is not the reason why we're doing this. We're doing this to increase our bottom line, to help our risk aversion as a company, and to really help embed sustainability to grow as a company. I mean, that's not for a plug here. I'm sure I'll do this 8 more times, but again, that's why Beehive's product is so incredible because it helps you really directly and quickly assess the physical climate risks to all of the most imperative business operations within your organization. And so, with that being said, one of the hurdles which I'm working on right now is business travel. Like Braze doesn't create a physical product. We don't have manufacturing plants. Our sales team is the blood and the heart of our organization. They're what push us through. And the reality of that situation is a lot of our big deals are closed over in-person dinners. And in fact, multiple in-person dinners. And that requires cross-country flights, international flights, long hotel stays. So we're trying not to have that approach where maybe we communicated it at first being like, hey, this is what we're doing. We have this emission reduction target for our business travel in scope 3. We've got to meet it because that immediately gets met with, whoa, 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 how are we going to operate and continue to do our job? This negatively impacts the company. So I'd say not necessarily a roadblock, but something that we're trying to avoid is like really that effective communication to move programs forward and gain buy-in from stakeholders who, in the past, when confronted with these programs, have been hesitant.
Yeah. I want to, and that was a very nice, not a plug. I appreciate it. I want to ask, you joined Braze in, I think, August of 2024. 3 months later, there was an election. 3 months later, inauguration. A lot changed after that. I know at Braze, I think your description of why you're doing this and how you're doing this is very impactful, but it is supported by the fact that your CEO really cares. I was at your guys' Climate Week event, and he came and spoke for 20, 30 minutes at that event. I know it really is a thing that's very tops down, in addition to the fact that your customers request all this and all that to be true. Just to share a personal anecdote from earlier today, I spoke with somebody at a large publicly traded media company, and they came from investor relations, started doing sustainability work about 3 or 4 years ago when the SEC was rumored to have a thing and CSRD was rumored to have a thing, and for all the reasons that you described. They've done it for a long time. And then now the business is just not investing in it quite as much. And she did not make all those arguments either as eloquently or maybe they're not received quite as well. And she's beginning to back away from sustainability work and move back into her investor relations work. And this is a company, by the way, that is larger by revenue than Braze. I'm curious what you would say to that experience and how you might advise other people to consider it. Her perspective was not every company needs to lean into sustainability. And some people think it's an advantage and they do it. And other people don't think it's an advantage and they don't do it. And that's just, it's neither good nor bad. It's just what it is. Other people make the argument sustainability is as fundamental as cybersecurity and everyone needs to have a baseline program. How do you advise somebody who's maybe in that person's role struggling with they're not getting the support and the resources and they are being able asked to step back? Maybe the election has only limited things to do with it, but how do you advise someone like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And for anyone just joining, I apologize if throughout this call I take out a tissue. I'm battling a daycare cold for my daughter. It's a
The
great
strongest
question.
force in the world, the daycare cold.
Yeah, seriously. No, it's a great question. I just speaking personally on my behalf, not on my company's behalf. I think that regulations are the number one and most important driver for all climate work. I don't think it's close. I think that sustainability professionals, including myself, get frustrated with regulations because it requires more reporting, and we already don't have any bandwidth in our day-to-day jobs. But it really is what pushes us. And I know that having ambitious climate targets without regulations is great, but at the end of the day, the companies who have the biggest emissions footprint aren't doing the work needed that they need to do. And that's really the push from the regulations. And the reason why I bring that up is I think that's a really interesting conversation because going back to my time at Verizon, almost 3 years ago now, or two and a half years ago, excuse me now. I mean, the last big project I finished was expanding our operational net zero science-based target to a full net zero science-based target, which includes our scope three. And really, we got the buy-in from that. We built out like a 75-page slide deck, the whole business case to the executives and the boards at the company. And it really could have just been one slide, right? It was that, hey, CSRD, CS triple D is coming in from the European Union. We have the SEC regulation coming in. This was pre-election. And we have all of the California regulations coming in, SB 251 and 263, or 253 and 261, excuse me. So we're going to be required to do this work. So we should get ahead of it. Now, in my current role at Braze, a lot of these regulations are still tentatively coming into place, especially the California ones. But CSRD has rapidly, dramatically changed since I was last using it as a business case. The SEC law, at least last that I've heard, isn't moving forward. I did see a report this week that it might be trickling
Everyone
back
saw the
up.
report. I think that was a huge mistake and a bug, and they published the 2021 article yesterday. So I'm
Yeah.
warning
So
everyone. ESG News published an article saying the S&P law is back, and that is not correct. So do not
yeah. So I was
follow that.
hesitant to even mention it.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I
and so
saw that and
we
it's been talked about. Yeah.
So all that to say is I really changed my approach for buy-in for sustainability programs and moving them forward. We're shifting more from regulations to what our customers are asking us for. I'm very happy to say that because we have a big European presence, we're getting upwards of 5 customer and supplier sustainability requests per week. Our highest month was like 25 a couple months ago on a variety of different sustainability initiatives. So asking us, hey, are you doing a product carbon footprint, which we're not doing right now? Or are you guys considering a full net zero target in addition to your near-term target? So we're compiling all of these and starting to build the business cases for programs to take us to the next step. And so that's huge for us. And then just also connecting it to, as I mentioned earlier, in connecting it to risk, company risk. Like what is the physical climate risk? When we don't own any data centers, but we do lease them and they're imperative to our day-to-day operations. So are we considering physical climate risks in the data centers that we're renewing and the new ones that we're selecting? We're constantly opening new offices all around the globe. Are we considering physical climate risk with the locations that we're putting those offices in, how that impacts employees, their ability to connect to our network day in and day out, and how that might be impacted by climate change, such as extreme heat, natural weather disasters, etc. Because we know it's coming, it's inevitable at this point, and the real question now is, are we prepared for it?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up data centers. So I want to spend some time there. I know you do a lot of work with the data center team and the real estate team, but we'll start with data centers for now. What is your collaboration like with the data center team across all your work? I'm sure it's a huge part of your emission, probably the biggest part of your emissions. I'm sure it's part of your emissions reduction strategy as well. Like, what do you do with, and it's part of your resilience work? What do you do with the data center team? Like, what are those conversations like? What are you hoping to get out of them? What do they
Yeah,
benefit from you?
we'll talk about global real estate, who we've launched a few initiatives with over the past year and work really closely with. For our data center team right now, we're strictly at phase one, the educational phase. Um, we're a member of a couple external working sustainability working groups where a number of other sustainability leads, and primarily in the SaaS industry, are getting together to collaborate to say, hey, how can we work together to better engage Amazon and Microsoft and other cloud providers to get the most accurate data that we can for our footprint and our measurement. But we're also trying to have discussions about AI usage internally, educating employees on what that looks like. For those who aren't very familiar with Braze, we recently acquired last summer one of the leading AI marketing software companies in the world called OfferFit. A significant percentage of our employees are artificial intelligence professionals at this point. So AI really is becoming more and more prevalent within our organization. So trying to develop those internal policies. And then third, and what we're touching on right now is data center selection and incorporating that process. I'll be very honest, that has been a big challenge for us. We're working on trying to find the key internal stakeholders who will work with us on that. I'm building out the business case for why that work is so important and why we need to incorporate climate
And what
change
do you
factors
want to do with
selection.
that work? Let's say you had a clean slate and everybody did exactly what you wanted them to do. What does a fantastic relationship look like with the data center team? What are they considering when selecting which data centers to go with or keeping data safe? What are they doing?
Yeah, I mean, first, having a seat at the table, which we currently don't have. And it doesn't necessarily have to be me, but having someone with a sustainability lens at the table when considering, hey, should we have, I'm going to make something up hypothetically, but like, should we have a data center in Southeast Asia, or should we look at this data center in Arizona? And right now we aren't considering physical climate risks when we're making those decisions. And those are going to be really imperative. And I say we're not doing that, but the hope is that that starts changing and that we start incorporating
Mhm.
that lens into that decision making. So I'd say in like my dream world, that one, having a seat at the table, and then what the actual discussions will look like is that, again, using a tool like Beehive, that we can say, hey, if we're operating in the Philippines or Taiwan, like these are the physical climate risks that we need to be aware of. And then on top of that, like if these data centers go out for 1 day, 2 day, 1 week, like this is the actual monetary threat to our bottom line if this goes out. Whereas if we look at another site, that risk could go down 10, 15, 25%. Again, these are all predictive models, but I
Yeah.
think it does tie directly into our bottom line, whether we're talking about data centers, office spaces, or just our overall real estate footprint.
I think that's a good chance to go back to the start of the conversation. It's about governance. Because I think what you just described around the seat at the table is something I try to talk about a lot, which is our goal is not to convince you that climate risks are material to your business. They might not be. Our
Mhm.
goal, for Braze, like far above climate related risks is cybersecurity risks. And you guys communicate directly to customers. So there's probably, and you use a lot of AI. So there's probably like AI trust and ethics are a much bigger deal than climate related risks. Like those should be higher. But the point of all these regulations and the TCFD and all these frameworks and everything that everybody is doing here is just to say we want to have a consistent process to assess and, if necessary, mitigate these risks. And that starts with good governance. And I can share some of the things that I like seeing companies do around establishing governance here. But I'm curious before we start on the climate risk topic, you said you came in, you want to establish good governance, you want to have this monthly meeting of your sustainability committee. What is discussed in these meetings? What is the format? Which roles was it really important for you to get into that meeting? What do you talk about every single month? Your emissions didn't change month over month. Take me into one of those meetings. Who's there and what are you talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. It really depends on time of year, right? So, like, we have our next sustainability steering committee next week. We are in the thick of our reporting. So, we'll be talking about what we're going to be communicating within our upcoming ESG report, which is going to be published at the end of July. Also, what's going to be happening with our TCFD report, how we're going to be updating that, the progress on our GHG accounting is going. And then if you're thinking back kind of like towards the end of the year, we talk about our strategy for 2026, saying, hey, this is what we've accomplished. This is maybe what we fell short of. These are the big initiatives that we're trying to tackle. And what we're really trying to do and why it's a monthly meeting and not a quarterly meeting is we're trying to embed it within every organization. I want progress updates on like, hey, we talked about this 2 months ago with the sales team. What questions did they have? Are we seeing progress? Hey, we just released a green lease framework for our real estate team where we have a new checklist for sustainability for every office lease that we pursue. How is that going? What questions are we getting from landlords? Is there pushback? Are there some exceptions that we need to make? Because I want to continuously get updates so that I can modify our programs to fit into our company needs. I feel like if we're doing that on a quarterly basis, I'm already way behind on the progress. And by the fact that we get to meet monthly, I can really stay up to date and feel the pulse of all these programs that I'm embedding throughout the whole company. And everyone understands where everyone else in the organization is coming from. So there's examples, especially like if you think about sustainable travel, that impact so many different departments. But if we soft launch it with one group, then these other three groups that will inevitably be impacted are going to see the journey every month that we meet of that one group, and they can learn from it. They can identify challenges before they even arise. And so it's just an opportunity to really work collaboratively and again, just break down those walls.
Who's in these meetings and are you doing all the speaking? Are they coming in with a slide or two each? Like, what is the skeleton framework of one of these meetings? If I wanted to go set one of these up at my company, who am I asking to join? And what homework am I giving them in between meetings?
Yeah, I mean, the hope is that I'm really monitoring and listening and getting all the info back, and then maybe proposing next steps. Obviously, especially the first couple meetings, you do all the talking as people are a little nervous and afraid to speak up. But yeah, like for example, right now because we're doing updates on ESG reporting, I'm doing probably 70% of the talking, but getting updates on how every team's progressing. But again, that's why I mentioned at the top of the call that I did that listening tour. Every organization is different. So you really need to meet with VPs, directors, SVPs to see which departments are really driving your emission reduction initiatives. So for me, that's our heads of global real estate, our heads of finance, procure. We have a couple people on the procurement and sales sides of things. I think our full steering committee is about 9 people.
And are all nine coming every month?
Yes.
So I'll come
Yeah,
every month if they
again,
have an update.
whether you're on the agenda or not, we really push for everyone to attend every meeting because we want the sustainability knowledge to be shared company wide.
Yeah. And just like nuts and bolts governance wise, are you taking minutes? Are you publishing the agenda somewhere? Are you saying there's a clear sign off process on every decision we make? Or is this just the framework of like, this is more, I just want everybody to be involved and seat at the table and part of the conversations?
No, we try to make it action oriented. So I mean, if we're talking real like logistical pieces of these
Yeah,
meetings,
no, like be very tactical.
yeah. I mean, I send out the deck 2 to 3 days in advance so everyone can review and provide feedback in advance of the meeting. I build out the deck for every meeting. I mean, individual members obviously contribute and send me their sections, but I build it out. I am taking the minutes during the meeting, and then I'm following up very intently with an email to the entire group or Slack channel, whatever the preference is at the time, with next steps, tagging who's involved in that, and not just saying like, hey, you're responsible for this initiative, but saying what, and this is obviously dependent on the initiative, but I'll just give a hypothetical example of like in 1 month we want to be here, by the end of the quarter we want to be here, by the end of the year this is where we want to be with this program. How do we, and then within each of those detailing what the exact specific tasks are to get there and who needs to be involved at a sub level, right? Because it's not just good enough to say, hey, VP, like I need your team to get to this goal. We have to say, okay, what directors, what managers, what teams need to work together to reach this? So we bring in those SVPs because they have like the vision of the whole organization and the pulse, but it trickles down really all the way down to our lowest level employees.
Yeah. What are the, you talked about teams who you're very close with, like the global real estate team. You talked about teams you want to be closer with, like the data center team. You can't do it all. There's a big, for anyone who was at Green Biz about a month ago, one of the big keynotes was like, do we need a chief sustainability officer anymore? Yes or no? That was a bit of a hot take and whatever. People argued on either side. My deeper question is, you can't do it all as a one person team and you're not getting four people beneath you. So where do you draw the line between leaning in and trying to do more and trying to get someone else on board and say, you know what? We're not going to win everybody. I can't have a strong relationship with 20 different departments. So there's some who would just not be touched. Like, are there teams who you say, you know what? I'd love to do better there, but it can't be, if it's not a top three priority, it's got to be done with? Or are you saying, nope, you know what? That's the burden of sustainability. Everyone, we got to be as broad a tent as possible and bring everybody in, no matter how hard it is for me.
Yeah, I mean, if it connects to our near-term science-based targets, I'm pushing for it regardless. Those are public targets that we have to reach by 2032, and that work needs to start now in order for us to have a chance. There are teams that I don't, lenient isn't the right word, right? But I'm more flexible with that. I'm saying like, okay, we can take like a half measure approach now and then be more aggressive down the line as we build out the program. So like, just to go back, like sales is a great example, right? Like we're not trying to rock the boat too much with them, but they still need to make progress. So if that's, hey, at first we're gonna collect the data on like the importance of certain trips versus others, and then like the second phase of that may be, all right, now let's really can develop a policy of which meetings can be virtual versus in person. And then like the final step of that is like, all right, let's create an internal carbon tax program, right? Where if you are required to travel, like it'll cost your organization this much, we'll build it into the budget, and then through that we'll purchase offsets. So like that's just an example. And then whereas like the other side of the table is like global real estate, who's been a great partner of ours. That work can just really be pushed hard. They're fully on board. They understand the value. And also, if you get a building that's LEED Platinum certified in Paris, for example, it's not just environmentally friendly. It's almost 100% of the time a fantastic office to lease. Because if they are LEED Platinum, they also have a lot of other incredible features that we're looking for our employees to thrive and an employee experience, and that's very comfortable and that they enjoy going to. They kind of go hand in hand. So for
Yeah.
those, we really were able to push programs hard to really decarbonize our Scope 1 emissions footprint with our offices as much as possible.
Yeah, that's cool. I want to, in the last third here, talk a bit about AI. And I
Yeah.
want to talk about it in maybe two conversations, the challenges and the opportunities. And maybe we'll go in reverse order. But when we were prepping, I think you told me that, I don't know, some crazy percentage, 25, 30% of your employees are AI focused engineers. You acquired an AI company. Um, you are spending a lot of time in AI tools. So maybe talk about this. Let's stick to the sustainability lens, not the Braze at large. But you've been doing this for 10 plus years. Even when you came into Braze 2 years ago, the suite of tools and the development of AI was just a very different position than what it is now.
Yeah.
How are you leaning into AI? What is it allowing you to do more of, or do a better job of, or go deeper on? And then what are you trying to do more of with it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and I'm smiling to myself because it feels like in 3 weeks, whatever answer I provide is going to be outdated, right? It's just things are changing so quickly. But as a sustainability professional, leading a program for a publicly traded company, the first thing that we're doing with AI is trying to really reduce the workload burden that I have. I'm a team of one effectively. And I'm in charge of all of our internal sustainability programs as well as the majority of our ESG reporting. So one thing we're doing is we're using a third-party AI company to write our ESG report this year. There is a human element. It doesn't just come out with 5,000 M dashes in a report. And we are feeding all of the updates, all of the data. But we're expecting this to reduce from our content team across our organizations, like the governance team, the social impact team, sustainability, our diversity, equity, and inclusion work. We're expecting to reduce the reporting burden by 65 to 70% this year, just through the usage of that tool. It's actually a really exciting time. We're finalizing all of our content updates and edits internally this Friday, and then next week we're actually putting all of those updates into the AI system to generate our first draft of our report. So fingers crossed. But yeah, next week we're kicking off and we're already seeing the benefits of this. I mean, this used to be a 2 to 3 month process for us over the last 2 years. And this year, if all things go according to plan, we're really looking at 2 to 3 weeks just for this part. And we expect further time commitments and reductions during our ESG reporting process this year. So I would say that is first and foremost what we're using the tools for. Secondly, for me personally, I'm trying to be as in touch with artificial intelligence as possible. As Adriel mentioned, our company is using and building out AI agents for the majority of our work. We've actually built in AI bots and agents who are working overnight. So kind of our work never sleeps, literally. And so I'm working on that as well. I'm actually signed up currently for a Claude sustainability and AI course, where right now I'm being trained on how to build out AI agents and bots to do our GHG measurement internally, to build out business case slide decks, and to really move our program forward. So my vision, and I'll have to report back on how successful this is in 3 to 6 months, maybe I have 2 to 3 AI agents who are almost operating as analysts under me, who can help me, whether that's doing regulatory benchmarking or building out the business case deck with all the inputs I'm putting in for a full net zero case. So I'd say that's how we're looking at AI right now is one, just trying to reduce some of the work that has just really taken up 50% of our year with reporting, and then two, educating ourselves internally to see how we can really take advantage of artificial intelligence in our day-to-day work.
What do you do with the time? Let's say you get back the whole promise of it. The whole promise of when I was selling carbon accounting software 4 years ago, the whole promise was get out of spreadsheets, we'll give you your emissions faster. That wasn't entirely true with software, but with AI, we're promising it again.
Yes.
Buy our shiny object, and instead of it taking you 3 months, it'll take you 3 weeks. Instead of it taking you 3 weeks, it'll take you 3 hours. What do you is it a go home early thing? Is it a you're not getting to certain issues and now you can get to those issues thing? Like, let's say you did save yourself 3 months of work. Congratulations, your year is now 15 months long. What are you investing that time into?
Ambition. It's
Just
it's
personal, political,
no,
taking over the
no,
city of Boston
for
ambition.
no for my work. It's saying, hey, we've got more time. Why can't we try to hit our targets earlier? Why can't we build out these programs more robustly? Why can't we take the work that we've done and educate our supplier base? Why, like, don't keep it in-house. Like, we didn't have the time for this anymore, but now we can take all of these learnings and say, hey, our top 50 supplier base who's making up 75% of our emissions and who's trying to figure out this journey as well, why don't we train and educate them on what we've learned and what challenges we face and how they can also overcome those? So I really think it's sharing that knowledge out to others. If we're successful, obviously, this is the hypothetical. And then secondly, just trying to be as ambitious as possible. Like, hey, we have a 2032 goal. What if we have all this time? Why not try to achieve it by 2029? Hey, this is our business case for full net zero. Look at we're 2 years ahead of where we expected to be at this time. Let's continue to push forward. Let's continue to make an impact. And let's see how much of an impact we can have, and are we really true leaders? Like, do we want to just be in compliance for these things, or do we truly want to lead? And I'm hoping that this extra bandwidth with artificial intelligence lets us do that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, Someone here asked the question, are you completing industry surveys such as EcoVadis and CDP? And if so, how's it going?
Yeah, so in a prior life, I did many, many CDP reports. At Braze, we do not report to CDP. At this time, I expect that will change in probably 2 to 3 years, but right now we do not. We do report to EcoVadis annually. I did Braze, the first time that I conducted our EcoVadis report was last year. And it was, I think, the first time that we ever received a medal. So right now we're bronze medal for EcoVadis, so it has gone well. But that's a great example and a great follow-up question. I just want to see who asked this question. Yeah,
This is
Jim, that's a
Jim.
great question because I would say I probably spent 6 to 8 weeks total last year on the EcoVadis report. We had to work for the first time with so many different internal stakeholders and educating them on this and updating policies and updating our employee code of conduct and making sure that everything was fitting in perfectly. And again, it's something we're using artificial intelligence for right now. So the same organization that we're working with our ESG report, they have a function for EcoVadis as well. So literally yesterday, I got our 2026 EcoVadis questionnaire and I took our questions that we submitted last year and we sent them to this AI, this artificial intelligence third party. And what they're going to do is they're going to fill in all of our questions and then identify the gaps of where we don't have enough information, where we can improve our score. So again, we're hoping that that's really going to cut down on the amount of time. Uh,
Yeah, very cool. It sounds like Jim's saying that they've done it. It's been a challenge the first time through. They're being asked to do it by some customers, but it will improve significantly
Yeah,
this year.
it
It's
is
hard to
a heavy, Jim, it is a heavy lift. And I will say probably EcoVadis is probably my least favorite part of my job in full transparency. I don't love it, and I never have. But yeah,
Jim doesn't like it
yeah, it is
either.
necessary. If you ever want to talk offline, I'm happy to talk about strategies that we approached to get our score up, and just try to figure out like the best way to manage that process. Because especially if you're getting pressure from customers and suppliers, those first 2 to 3 years, it really can be a burden. So happy to talk about that more offline.
Yeah. Our friend Brendan just joined. Hey, Brendan, right on time. So actually, this is good time because I want to ask the question.
Classic. It shows up for the Q&A.
Classic Brendan, 45 minutes late. Come on, guy. When Brendan did this webinar, Brendan from DocuSign did this webinar maybe 8 months ago, and he talked about all these really interesting AI tools that he's building out for himself. I think he uses called Notebook LM from Google, and he did a lot with it to organize all of their documents and to be able to spit out reports and answer sales questions. And he built all these things out himself. You talked about doing both, building things out yourself and Claude for sustainability leaders, and maybe you'll build your own agents. But you also talked about the tools that you are using or want to be using. How do you think about, especially at a tech company, it was very popular a year or two ago, and I think this is changing, but for every executive to say, hey, we bought you a license to ChatGPT or to Claude, go build everything yourself. We never need to buy anything ever again. I think that's changing now. But how do you think about what you can and should build yourself? Because all of a sudden you have the power of a pretty decent engineer at your fingertips in plain English versus saying, you know what? There's tools and vendors out there for a reason. No one's just vibe coding Braze. So it'd be naive to think you just vibe code everything else. But what is your balance or your strategy to say, hey, this is a problem I can solve using AI on my own versus this is a problem I want to solve going out to a vendor?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question. I think anyone, not just working in the software industry, but just any white collar professional in today's age, has had that moment of panic where they've looked in the mirror and they've said, "Hey, like, am I getting automated away?" Whether that's like their individual role or their company's offering, and it's just not true. Like as it's and it's kind of touches on what we discussed a few minutes ago, Adriel, is that like it's just a tool to increase bandwidth, right? It's adding more to what we can do and dramatically increasing our output, which I think is really essential and important to remember. So like when we're thinking about these tools at Braze, like that is what I have in the back of my head is just like, yes, we can just continuously work on the output and it can help us dramatically, whether it's from a reporting phase, whether it's from building out dashboards to better understand our emissions portfolio, or whether it's helping us realize a story and build out a story from the previous work that we've done.
Yeah. Really quick, just in the last 10 minutes here, I just posted our next upcoming webinars. Next week, we're interviewing the lead sustainability reporter at Syncora, which is a Fortune 10 company, one of the largest pharma companies in the world. They just published their report like 2 days ago. I think this is one of the first like public conversations we're having about it. So that would be really cool if anyone's in the healthcare or pharma world or wants to understand how a large company does this. In 2 weeks, we're talking to the ESG lead or sustainability lead at ChargePoint, the electric vehicle company. And then with the wonderful Kira Ferber at Universal Music Group. And then in 4 weeks, I'm doing a Beehive product training. So if you want to get a deep dive into how the product works and where it's evolving, those would be really good opportunities for all of that. We do this webinar pretty much every week, I think without a break. We try to go without a break. Um, Dylan, in the last few minutes here, where I want to end up is on what your biggest goal is for the next year and what your biggest challenges for the next year. You talked a lot about net zero targets and science-based targets and how that is the basis of everything you want to do. So let's, putting aside progress towards that as a general topic, if you came out at the end of 2026 and you only had one win, what does that win have to be for you? And if you left 2026 with just one regret or just one thing you think is going to be the hardest in your year, what are those things?
Yeah, I feel like I can kill two birds with one stone here. It's the supplier engagement work that I've been working on diligently, basically every day for the past 3 months. So my goal at the end of 2026 would be to have a pretty robust cohort of tier one suppliers who haven't established any sort of a sustainability program yet, who have all agreed to measure their operational emissions for the first time in 2027. We're working really hard to get to that point. We're building out all of the educational materials. I've had one-on-one meetings with over 30 of our most material suppliers who don't have any sort of an ESG or sustainability program to date. And we're going to hopefully launch our first educational training with those suppliers later this spring. And so we're working through like breaking down those barriers, educating them, making sure that they know that we're here for them through that whole process. And then by the end of the year, we're hoping we get that commitment of, hey, we're going to measure so that we can really make significant impact on first, just knowing what our true purchase goods and services emissions footprint actually looks like. And then second, once we have that information to make real impact on our emission reduction initiatives within our supplier base.
Yeah, for a company like Braze, what types of companies are your largest suppliers outside of data centers?
Yeah, outside, I was going to say, obviously, as you can
Outside
imagine,
of data
it's
centers.
AWS, it's Azure, et cetera. Same with the
But I'm
majority.
impressed, like, I mean, the question behind it is like, you have 30 what you would call tier one suppliers that don't have any emissions programs. That's shocking.
We have more than that.
Because
Yeah.
or you
Yeah.
met
Because
with 30 rather,
because
yeah.
it gets small scale. To be fully transparent. If you think about our our big cloud providers, they make a significant portion of our emissions. I'm going to make something up hypothetically, but let's say it's 25% of our emissions from like
Yeah.
four cloud providers. And so in order to make up the rest of that to reach science-based target of that 90% of emissions that qualify, you're then talking about potentially hundreds of suppliers. And so out of, let's say, that 100, half of them probably don't have an ESG or sustainability program. And we are committed to those suppliers for in multi-year contracts. So we want to make sure that we're working with them to build up and establish these programs. I think we get very narrow-sighted as sustainability professionals and being like, oh, every company's doing this work. Every company is kind of where we're at, or really just looking in the mirror and feeling like we're behind because we feel like we're not doing enough in our work. But the reality of the situation is there's thousands of companies who are scrambling, trying to meet upcoming California regulations coming out of Australia and the European Union, and they need help. It's not fair to just shoot them an email, and say, hey, you need to calculate your emissions and set an emission reduction target. Talk to you in 6 months. Like that is what we are trying to avoid at all costs. We're trying to work with them one on one and build out a collaborative program where we can find impact hand in hand.
Yeah. Kind of tied to that, but Brendan asked, shut up label with a very sharp question. Brendan asked, as your suppliers measure their emissions for the first time, are you looking at educating at easy reduction levers that they can do before the first footprint is done? Meaning, like, how ambitious is your first ask of these suppliers, or even maybe the ask is less ambitious, but the opportunity for them is higher? How are you treating what your hope is for them in the very beginning?
Yeah, for this first like 6 months really when we launch the program for the second half of the year, we're trying to keep the asks as simple as possible. So when it comes for direct asks, we're just asking like, hey, we want better estimation data and we want you to be prepared for the types of data we're going to be asking you for, or you're going to have to find yourself next year to actually calculate your footprint. So for now, just tell us like, hey, what's your geographical operating footprint? How many offices do you have? Where are they located? How many employees do you have? What percentage of your employee base is hybrid versus full-time in office? What's your revenue number? And just very baseline questions. We set up a system where they can report all this information, and I can't see the answers because a lot of the data that we're asking for is private and they wouldn't want to share
Mhm.
in general. So we built out a system where the end output is just that updated estimate for their emissions profile instead of just a general EEIO
Mhm.
estimate, which has been great. But what we're doing on top of that is with the educational webinars that we're building out, we're talking about like, hey, here are emission reduction levers that you can tackle within your first year. When you're looking 2 to 3 years out, this is what science-based targets are, and this is how you can build the internal buy-in to pursue those. Hey, here's what you can do to reduce your scope 2 footprint through VPPA programs and RECs. This is what you can do internally with your scope 1 to reduce your office footprint. So again, we're just trying to take all the lessons that we've learned over the last 4+ years and try to share those with our supplier base.
Yeah. Just don't make Jim do another EcoVadis survey,
Yes,
or
exactly.
he's gonna be real unhappy. Um, Dylan, I don't know if you're just 7x more capable and efficient than the average man, but you seem to be doing a lot of stuff with a very small amount of resources. It was very impressive, and I always learn a lot talking from you and hearing about your work. Any sort of final words to the team, and any final thoughts as you've been thinking about reflecting on your work at Braze for the last 2 years, your hopes for Braze for the next 2 years, your asks of the corporate sustainability community? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think I would just say, first and foremost, thanks everybody for attending. I know this is going to be shared with a lot more people offline. So if anyone has any questions on anything I've shared or wants to know more about any of the programs I've talked about today, happy to set up a one-on-one conversation offline. And secondly, I just wanted to just share like why I'm on this call today. It's because Adriel's launched an incredible product, and more importantly than that, he's been a great personal friend, an advocate for the work, not just at Braze, but that we're all doing. And we are not Beehive clients yet at this time, but the hope is that we will be soon, especially next year as we have to re-update our TCFD report. And I already talked about the importance of physical climate risk to our operational infrastructure. And I haven't found a tool that does it better than Beehive. So I really just wanted to shout out Adriel on this. In my last couple moments here, I just spent the last hour talking about myself. So I wanted to share the reason why I'm on here today is I wouldn't just do any old webinar. I think we have covered my limited bandwidth issues enough today. But I really do believe in the Beehive product. And if anyone has any questions about my thoughts on it and how we're approaching it, I'm happy to have that as well.
I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna spend the next hour crying. I'm canceling my calls. That is so nice of you. I really, really appreciate that, Dylan. Thank you. Huge thank you to you. Huge thank you to everybody who joined. And hello to the internet watching. But we appreciate it. I hope to see you at a future webinar, everyone. Dylan, you're the man. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye.